Hi, I'm Carolyn Lilly-Bali and this is the news at night. On tonight's show, charity album sets new record, two living legends get together to create music history, and top designer accused of child porn. Help, the album recorded together like Low and Heroes. Now they're back together to create music history again. Yes, it's David Bowie and Brian Eno.
What I'm having a lot of fun doing is devising a way of putting out 3 or 4 or even 5 albums, possibly before the end of the century. That will sort of be, for me, will fulfill an idea of a textual diary of the last 5 years of the millennium.
David Bowie is back with his feet firmly planted on experimental ground, which he also shares with his old collaborator Brian Eno. The result is a new album, Outside, which Bowie considers to be his best work since the duo last worked together 15 years ago.
It started off as a series of improvisations in the studio, and various themes started coming through. And as we sort of assembled the album, we sort of made it more narrative than it was, because it was really sort of diverse and didn't make any kind of linear sense at all.
An unhappy period in the 80s drove Bowie in recent years to try to redraft some creative goals, working through Black Tie, White Noise and his soundtrack work for the Buddha of Suburbia.
I used the excuse of writing a soundtrack to kind of find out what it was I really wanted to do. I sent that to Brian, and he was in agreement that this would be a good idea to work together. So we did. We got together, and we wrote sort of manifestos to each other. He did. I'm very lazy, so he did most of the writing. But I'd phone him up and say, I agree, or I disagree. It's hard to say exactly what it is that, I mean, every artist that I've talked to that's worked with Brian says the same thing. Well, I'm not quite sure what he does, but the end result is really good. And it's like he can look at some great, sprawling mess of work and hone in on one little particular area of it and say, that bit's really good, get rid of all the rest.
The first single, Heart's Filthy Lesson, reflects the narrative theme of the new album, where Bowie sings in character in a confusing murder mystery set sometime between 1977 and the end of this millennium.
I think artists add more confusion to the world, and that's their job. I think it opens the doors on what people otherwise presume to be a fairly complicated world. In fact, we show that it's even more complex and confusing than you could ever have imagined. Surf on chaos, that's what I say.
The clip for the single was shot by Sam Bayer, who was also responsible for Nirvana's video debut. He brought his artistic heritage to the project by employing working artists to interpret and design the setting.
It's kind of like knowing you're wearing grey underpants when you have a car crash. Kind of nobody, it doesn't really, you know, nobody's holding up a card and saying we're all artists. But you kind of feel it, you know, you kind of know that it's not a slick Hollywoody thing.
But is it an elitist kind of thing?
If something has inherently more than a monosyllabic idea, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's elitist. It means maybe that it's possibly slightly more complex than something next to it. That's all. It's elitist to somebody maybe who doesn't want anything more out of life than maybe a Trogs record. I adore the Trogs, but I like other things as well. I also like Renaissance art, but it doesn't mean that I particularly feel like an elitist.
And the Heart's Filthy Lesson goes on release across Europe today.